to reassure them?
Well, I think they can be reassured by our commitment to devolution, as I've said, demonstrated by our actions over the last 10 years, and also by reassured by our commitment to devolution, as I've said. In the Glasgow hospitals just last year. That's where our focus is. Increase the number of GPs in Scotland, increase the number of teachers in Scotland. That's what we're going to be presenting to people in Scotland next year. And in fact, next May's election will not be a referendum on, whether people agreed or disagreed or not with the Prime Minister's comments in a private meeting one evening in November, but actually should be a time for the Scottish people to pass a verdict on whether they think the SNP government has failed or succeeded. And in my view, they have failed the people of Scotland and have done so for the last 13 years.
Andrew Bowie, thank you. Conservative MP for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, Vice Chair of the Conservative Party. Your thoughts, very welcome. Vivian in Edinburgh says, why are you letting this Tory MP get away with saying the SNP has been a disaster for Scotland when they patently have not? Well, I mean, we were trying to dig into the comments that Boris Johnson made, Vivian, and whether they were legitimate or not. Obviously, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I'm keen to know what you think of that. If you are a Scottish Conservative, was that reassuring to you? Let me know. 85058.
Now, a couple of things coming up later in the week here on Drive you might want to hear. On Thursday, we're going to be finding out what it's like to grow up with parents who are suffering from alcoholism and finding out how the pandemic also is affecting people who are serving apprenticeships at the moment. And on Friday, we're going to look ahead to the weekend's Autumn Nations Cup Rugby Union fixtures. Also, I just remembered later on, before 6 o'clock on the programme, we're going to speak to a couple who split up with their partners during first lockdown, but have got together during second lockdown, and they knew each other 10 years ago. It's a real lockdown love story.
It's what? It sounds like Coronation Street. So in fact, there's what?
No, so they were with other people, then they split up during the first lockdown. And then they've rekindled an old love and now are back together in the second lockdown.
Oh, okay, because I thought they were back together with the same people
No.
they split up with in the first lockdown,
No.
which seems, like an interesting
Wouldn't work.
choice. Huh?
Yeah, no, they found each other. So it still may not work. But
Don't say that. Did you say they were coming on? Don't say
they're
that.
not hanging on at the moment. They may probably not be listening. No, it will work. Obviously, I think it will work. Now, anyway, talking of love stories. If you were listening from the start of the show, you may already have heard this following piece of audio. If you watched I'm a Celebrity last night, Radio 1 presenter, Burnley fan, all-round decent fella Jordan North was chucked in a hole in the ground with a lot of snakes. You can hear at the end of this anti-Dex reaction to it.
Happy place, turf lawn. Is that a happy place?
Yes, well, they were even more disparaging later on about Turf Moor. Someone who'll set the record straight is someone I think who loves it just as much as Jordan, just as much as myself, hopefully. It is star striker, Burnley lad, former mascot, not mascot, you didn't dress up as Bertie B, former ball boy, Jay Rodriguez. Jay, hello.
Hey,
I'm all right, welcome to the programme. If he carries on like this, Jordan's going to be more famous than me and you.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, last night me and my wife were watching the show, and it was obviously hilarious. What got him through the trial and the way he did it. But fair play to him, he got through it and got the stars for the camp, so buzzing for really.
Yeah, he's a lovely lad, isn't he, Jordan? And also, Jay, I've been looking at your Twitter feed today. You've been complaining.
And every day, come on.
No, I don't stalk him. We have seen each other in our underwear in the gym, but I don't stalk him. But Jay, you say, I take it from what you said on Twitter that the players, because you were the only one in the side with a Burnley accent, made you repeat all this at training today. Is that what they did?
No, yeah, obviously, I put that out there. It was just a bit of fun and stuff, and obviously the lads seen it, and then they were joking about saying one that say it, but it's just obviously because I'm from Burnley and I've got the Burnley accent there. That's why it's so funny to Jordan. He's just like, there's every other lad from Burnley got the Burnley accent, and maybe not the screaming as much, but we've never been in a pit full of snakes, so I'll let him off with that.
Well, I think it'd be easy. I think you'd do that with ease, wouldn't you? What did you say happy place to the boys? Did you keep them happy today?
Yeah, it's always a happy place.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's why we've got you on. So you love Turf Moor. There's a famous picture for non-Burnley fans, Jay, of you were you a ball boy? Were you when Ian Wright ran out that day?
Yeah, that's right. I definitely remember that as well, because obviously Ian Wright was a big star, and you know when he ran Turf Moor was something the whole town was buzzing about, because obviously a legend of the game.
Yeah. So you know the ground back to front, not just on the pitch but on the turf. Can you sum up what it means to the people of Burnley? I was trying to do this myself a little bit earlier on, Jay, but why do people like Jordan and myself cling to the club, and it means so much to the people of Burnley, do you think?
Well, I think it's obviously, it's something to look forward to the weekend in terms of, the game, and I think everyone in Burnley supports everyone who's local, and I think obviously the team is so proud of, and I think it's, like I say, it's a big thing for families to go to the game, watch the game, see people that you know, and get behind the team that's representing your hometown. So I think for me it's definitely it's definitely something that you look forward to on Saturday. And yeah, I think it's everyone that gets together.
Which is your all-time favourite stand?
I'd have to say definitely, although when I was young I sat in the James R Green, but I'd say the Bob Law, just because obviously you see the comfy seats. Well, I'm not too sure if it's that comfy, but we used to call them the posh seats. I never could get in there, but no, I think probably Bob Law, because obviously it's a classic and it's not changed for many years.
That's where I've got my season ticket in there. That's where all the other...
Are you in the posh seats?
Yeah, well, they're wide, I'll give you that. They're hard. They're hard wood, Jay, when you sat on them for 90 minutes, clenching.
I bet.
But they're very wide, so there's some give in them. But yeah, that's where all the Burnley fans think other fans go to die. It's the old people stand. But I don't mind that. When you're on the pitch, Jay, do you think about the fans? Do you think you have an extra connection because of your Burnley roots?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, I've been in the stands myself as a fan, and obviously ball boy, and then to be on the pitch, obviously it was a surreal moment when it first happened. But yeah, I do feel like, I speak to friends, family, and they go on the game and talk about it. So yeah, it's definitely a different connection to playing at different clubs, because obviously this is my hometown. But no, obviously when you're on the pitch, it's just business, and you want to focus on what you've done all week to get the right result for the team. Have
you got much connection with Jordan? I know after an end of season party, I think he went into town and DJ'd a set for the captain Ben Mee. Were you there? Have you come across Jordan a lot?
Yeah, so obviously did an interview earlier this last year, and we started speaking after that, and we said we'd go out for a beer, definitely.
Right.
Yeah,
so nothing you've done with me, but never mind.
If you want to go for a beer, like I said to Jordan, we'll go to the Miners, and we'll have a beer, definitely.
Yeah, with the Miners. I do go there before games, and the one take club after. So look, and also another thing you have in common with Jordan, which is brilliant, Jay, is you do a lot of work for Pendleside Hospice, which is the local hospice for the area as well, which is a really good deal.
No, it is brilliant. Like I said, local lads sticking together and helping a local cause. I think it's close to his heart as well as mine. And like I say, we've got to use our platforms to create awareness and money to help the cause. So yeah, I think that's another thing we'll get together and try and organise something in the future.
Yeah, good. One thing, finally, Jay, one thing I'm accused of on here, because when I'm out in Burnley, I go very Burnley. But on the radio, I've got to kind of, because the people don't speak God's language as well as I do, I've got to try and change it. Have you done that over the years when you've moved to other clubs and that? Have you tried to knock the Burnley accent off of it?
No, literally, I think mine got worse when I moved to Southampton. I'm not too sure why. I think my wife spoke a lot better than what I did in terms of she was a bit posher than me, and she started speaking like me, but a lot of people down south couldn't understand me, because obviously I'm humble as well, so the accent didn't go down too well down there. But no, it's good to know where you come from and keep that. So I don't think my accent will change, definitely not.
Jay, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for coming on the programme, sharing your thoughts about Turf Moor, Happy Place. Or is it Happy Place, Turf Moor? Which way round is it? Happy Place, Turf Moor, isn't it?
Yeah. Happy Place, Turf Moor, yeah.
Good. I'm glad you said it. I was going to ask you, but I'm glad you said it. Right.
I'm not too sure how to think about that, but it should be good for North to get through it well.
Yeah. All right, top man, Jay. Thanks for your time.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Jay.
were doing well until that last question. I think you asked him to go to a place where he didn't really
I
want to go to.
didn't pin him down. I think he will come back.
I was going to say, you see, I was sort of listening to that, and obviously I didn't interrupt because I didn't want to embarrass you in front of him, but I did like the fact that you opened the interview by saying he's going to be more famous than you and me, and I like the fact that you put yourself on a similar rung of celebrity.
Locally.
Oh, locally?
Yeah.
But even locally, really.
No, locally. There's people
be
been
fair.
texting in more famous Burnley fans than me. So
Well, there's quite
I'm
a
being
few, though,
relegated.
isn't
There is quite a few. There's a
There
lot.
was somebody listening who because you said you were the 10th most famous earlier. There was somebody listening who texted and said they were the 11th. So it sounds like you're bringing up the rear. No, I enjoyed that. I always think it's nice sort of listening to somebody interview someone they're a tiny bit starstruck by.
Do you know what? I must be coming up in the world because when I was on local radio, I interviewed J-Rod. We rang him when he walking out to bed, so I had to interview his dad.
Really?
So it must be.
Well, you probably get a better insight.
Yeah.
Although I did like the bit where you just drifted into pure fandom halfway through and said, "Which is your all-time favourite stand?" I thought it was like I was reading a fanzine. Come on,
Yeah.
bring it round. Let's
I was
have
gonna
something
say,
for the non-Burnleyites.
The
among
urinal
us.
and pie shop were next, but I ran out of time. Anyway,
Good.
good.
Very enjoyable. I'll let you just sit and enjoy the afterglow from that for a few minutes. I'm sure we'll talk about Burnley again before the end of the programme. There's still 90 minutes to go, so I'm sure we'll get another reference in. Now, we were talking about this earlier on as well, about businesses telling MPs that they need at least a week's notice of any changes to lockdown restrictions in England. They want more clarity as well about how the tier system will operate after the 2nd of December, because MPs have talked about various different things. Matt Hancock said that it may change, it may not, but nobody really knows. Danny Hewson's back from 5 Live Money. Danny, there was strong language used today by businesses and business owners. What have they been saying?
Yeah, there were lots of warnings about the survival of many industries given to this committee hearing. It was the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee of MPs. And the whole idea of today was basically to ask businesses, business groups, unions about how businesses were coping, how good the support's been so far and what more needed to be done. And the big focus today was very much on what is next. Because remember, for businesses, many of them, this really is the golden period. Think about theatres, pubs, restaurants, shops. All would expect to be taking a really big chunk of their annual revenue between Halloween and New Year. We've heard about job losses, 660,000 in the hospitality sector so far, said UK Hospitality, 220,000 in retail, according to the Shop Workers Union USDAW. And there were warnings that continuing restrictions would have an impact on their ability to keep trading. And a plea, now this was the big bit today, more advance notice is needed of any changes, at least a week, and more clarity of what those changes would mean going forward.
Thank you, Danny. Danny Hewson there from 5 Money. Well, one of those who gave evidence today was Ralph Findlay, who's the chief executive of the pub chain Marston's. Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon.
Danny said there that one of the things that you would like is at least a week's notice. In an ideal world, how long would it take for you to plan, prepare, sort out staff, buy in stock? How long would you want to know in advance?
The honest answer is as long as we possibly could get. Christmas is obviously a massive part of the hosipitality's trading year, and you might find this a bit hard to believe, but we start planning for Christmas pretty much as soon as the next one is finished. So it is months and months of planning in terms of menus, supply chain, ordering, staff rotas, people we need, logistics, all of those things to come together. And I said this at the meeting today, I think the absolute minimum we can work with to try and get something that works for this Christmas will be a week's notice. And really what we need is, to be talked to be hopefully listened to try and get some restrictions lessened rather than increased. And certainly not to have any new ones imposed on us at a late stage in this process.
Is there any communication coming out of government at all, even, side channels, suggestions of what might happen? Because I presume you're asking for it.
We are definitely asking for it, but I'm getting probably as much as you are in terms of communication about what's going on. Much of what we hear is by way of a bit of speculation, a bit of leakage about what's being talked about, but nothing concrete in terms of what those plans are. And it really isn't good enough. I mean, we just need better dialogue with the government. We had it during the first lockdown. Before the first lockdown ended and we opened on the 4th of July, we had really good communication, not just on the kind of financial support that the sector needed, but also the details of the restrictions that we were working under. And that really worked. You know, we got something that actually was pretty good. That began, I think, to fade away as we came towards October and this lockdown, and communication has really dropped off quite a lot. And I think we suffered from it because the restrictions that were brought in September, the 10 p.m. curfew, things like that, I think they would have been better thought through and better delivered had we had proper communication from government.
How is this personally for you, Ralph? Because obviously, you know, we're talking about the fact that Christmas is a big time of year for businesses like yours, and I know you've already had to make more than 2,000 redundancies, and presumably you might need to make more. You don't know. How does that affect you day to day?
It's a big effect on me personally. I mean, I've been fortunate to work for Marston's and run Marston's for over 20 years. And in that 20-year period, we've added jobs all over the UK. We were running for most of the last decade 1,000 new jobs a year, and I've been really proud of that because we've given jobs to people in places across this country where employment is hard to come by. And half our workforce is under the age of 25, and I feel very strongly that part of my job is to stand up for that group of people and try and look after their interests as best I can. So for me to say there are over 2,000 jobs going, I am deeply upset by having to come to that decision.
Do you think you will have to make more redundancies?
The honest truth is, I hope not, but it depends on what happens with consumer confidence. If we can begin to see a roadmap away from these restrictions, and that's really what we all need, is a bit of hope and direction from all of this, a bit of a sense that actually there is light at the end of this tunnel. It will get better. That will help consumer confidence. And it definitely is possible, by the way, for this sector to operate under fewer restrictions than it is today. Wales is a good example. Wales has been in lockdown, but they have reopened. Their curfew is later than the curfew that is in England. It's 10:20 p.m., not 10 p.m. You are allowed groups of 4 from different families, and families are allowed more than 6 people in a hospitality environment. So they have done it. I think that demonstrates that it's possible, and I hope we can get something like that in England too.
Ralph Findlay, thank you, the Chief Executive of the pub chain Marston's. I always think it is interesting to hear as well. I think you sometimes have an assumption that people who are running major companies are maybe getting information from the government, sort of hint about what to do, but interesting to hear that there's really nothing coming through this time for those big companies either.
It's Drive on 5 Live, still lots to get through. Don't forget, we're going to talk, we had a really interesting chat about adoption about an hour or so ago. We're going to follow up on that very shortly. We're going to talk about that lockdown love story, the couple who, are you ready, Anna? The couple who split up from their original partners during lockdown 1.
Yes, I've got this now, yes.
Had an old bubbling kind of, they've met years ago, and then they've got together in lockdown 2.
Did they, so the first time round, did they have a relationship the first time round, or did they just kind of like each other?
No, they met at a party in 2011. So they'd literally just passed each other, ships in the night.
Interesting.
Well, you can probe them. They're coming on later, so we shall do that.
I was going to say, all these questions and more will be answered before 6.
Yeah, one's from Sydney, and the other one's from Torquay. So that's to come, right? I know, I love talking.
There's so much said by a little snort there.
It is 5:33.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
The headlines this afternoon: more than 2 million people are going into Scotland's toughest COVID lockdown restrictions from Friday. Level 4 rules will be placed on 11 council areas across western and central Scotland, including Glasgow. The Scottish Conservative leader is insisting Boris Johnson does believe in devolution, despite reports the Prime Minister described it as a disaster. Douglas Ross says it's the SNP's obsession with independence rather than devolution that is the problem. A member of the House of Lords has retired from Parliament after seeing a conduct report recommending he be expelled for sexually exploiting a vulnerable woman. Lord Ahmed says the allegations are not true and he will appeal. And travel rules have been relaxed for people arriving in England to work on poultry farms to make sure there's enough turkey available for Christmas dinners. Turkey pluckers will be able to start work during their 14-day quarantine, but will have to stay within the same group of workers to avoid any potential spread of the virus. Those are the headlines then. Dallas here with the sport.
Thank you, Tony. The family of 1966 World Cup winner Nobby Stiles says football needs to address the scandal of dementia in the game. The former England and Manchester United midfielder died last month. He had dementia and prostate cancer. Stiles is the 5th member of England's World Cup winning squad to have been diagnosed with dementia. His family has called for urgent action. Here's Nobby's son, John Stiles.
Very simply, it hasn't reacted. It's deliberately avoided it, in my opinion. A coroner said that Jeff Astle died from heading the ball. We had another one in Hull last week. In the meantime, there's been hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of footballers who've suffered with it, and football has deliberately, in my opinion, not dealt with it because it will cost money and it may affect the brand.
BBC Sport has contacted the PFA for comment, while in a statement the Football Association said collaboration across football's governing bodies is key in order to better understand this important issue collectively, and we firmly believe that all areas of football should come together for this meaningful cause. The potential for fans to return to sports venues in some parts of England is being explored by the government. It comes after the Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden described talks with football leaders as constructive following a virtual summit meeting earlier today. The Department of Media, Culture and Sport is now working on allowing fans into stadia in areas where rates of infections are deemed sufficiently low, possibly before Christmas. Lindsay Hooper from the all-female football podcast The Offside Rule WSL edition told 5 Live that women's football has badly suffered during the pandemic.
The lack of visibility this summer when it comes to women's sport, and if we're talking women's football in particular, you know, the Lionesses haven't played any of their friendlies that were scheduled against Germany. There was meant to be one against Norway, that's been cancelled. So there's a real lack of visibility as well around the issue.
The US Open champion Dominic Thiem got the better of the French Open champion Rafael Nadal at the ATP finals in London. In the match of the tournament so far, Thiem beat the Spaniard 7-6, 7-6 to all but reach the semi-finals.
I think it's important that we players who are privileged to do our job, to give all the people who are not that privileged a great time, at least these 2.5 hours where we're on court.
Yeah, it was on BBC Two. 5 Live Sports Extra, though, has commentary of Stefanos Tsitsipas against Andrei Rublev from 8 this evening. The Wasps flanker Jack Willis has been left out of the England squad ahead of Saturday's Autumn Nations Cup match against Ireland. Willis made a try-scoring debut against Georgia last weekend, but he's missed out on Eddie Jones's 25-man squad. Bath's Sam Underhill returns, though. He says competition in the back row is fierce but fair.
It's brilliant to be able to train and play with guys as capable as the back row as we got here, and there's no sense of, like, you know, the younger or less experienced guys, there's no sense that they don't carry themselves like that at all. There's no sense of like hierarchy around it or anything. It's a very respectful and very sort of competitive and good-natured group.
Fly half George Ford is named despite an Achilles problem, while flanker Lewis Ludlam, second row Johnny Hill and wing Ollie Thorley are also included. That's the latest for now from BBC Sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
Looking at the roads, the M1 northbound at junction 15 at Northampton. There's a broken down car on the exit slip which is causing slow traffic back onto the main carriageway. The M25 clockwise from junction 24 Potters Bar to 25 Enfield where it meets the A10. An accident there closing 2 lanes with queues back to junction 22 at St Albans. Delays of about an hour there. And then once you're through that, there's another accident from junction 26 Waltham Abbey to 27 the M11. That's closing 1 lane and also making things very slow. Michelle Dignan, 5 Live Travel.
Michelle, thank you very much indeed. Earlier on in the programme, we spoke to Dr. Inga Leymans, who's trying to rediscover old industrial smells to bring back our past. It doesn't always work well, though, that. Andrea has texted, Anna, I don't know what you make of this. Says, many years ago, I dated a guy who lived in Burton-on-Trent. He lived right near the Bovril Marmite factory and a brewery. The mixture of the two smells was vile. We didn't date for long. I bet that's the first bloke who's ever been dumped because of the way his street smells.
For smelling like Bovril. You see that? Yeah, you wouldn't really want to go out with someone who smells like Bovril, would you?
Or any kind of food stuff.
Well, quite. Well, having said that, though, somebody did text in to say that they live near the Uncle Joe's Mint Balls factory.
Oh, yes.
In Wigan, which smells particularly fresh. Years ago, Fleetwood Town went on a cup run, and I did, I think it was weekend breakfast from the Fisherman's Friend factory in Fleetwood, which was one of my favourite ever broadcasts, not inside the studio, because one reason why is because Sid Little came along, because he lives nearby, so that was great. But the other one was that just the smell. I mean, if you had any kind of cold or sinus problems, you can walk into there and whoop, it knocks you out. It's brilliant.
That's quite right. Mal, some of these smells are getting slightly unusual. Mal on the M6 says the smell of recently dug lugworm in damp newspaper takes me back to happy afternoon fishing sessions with my dad on Walney Beach, where I later scattered his ashes. So there we are, a secret scatterer to boot. There's one text I can't find it. So
I still want to know what the difference in the smell of a recently dug lugworm, and a sort of lugworm that was dug up a little while ago.
Well, I'm curious. Attached soil. I would have thought there were little bits of soil attached.
So I'm
no expert.
Well, maybe. No. Clearly,
I say that to a lot of things, don't I?
Yeah.
I can't find a text, so I can't give a credit to this guy. But he says back in the day that he used to live near the HP sauce factory somewhere or other. And anyway, when he was coming home at night, that's all he had to follow the smell. If there was fog or anything, he just followed the smell and found his way home, which I thought was a nice story. But I can't find it to give him credit, so apologies for that. If you've got any nostalgia you want to share with us, or if you've secretly scattered somebody's ashes, because that's another avenue we've wandered off on.
I'm passing the mic to those who know it best, the players themselves.
We are expected to win. Our federation, our country expects that from us.
What really goes on and off the pitch.
Why did I put the cowboy on?
I'm Beck Smith, and this is The Players. Subscribe on BBC Sounds.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live, available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
Good afternoon, everybody. James in Gloucester, thank you. It was the text from James, so I'm pleased to be able to put that straight. Right, an adoption charity says black children in care have to wait longer to be adopted than those from any other background, and more than half of the people they spoke to who were open to the adoption would prefer a child from the same ethnic group as theirs. Before 5, we spoke to Luke, who's mixed race, was adopted by a white couple as a baby and is now an adopted father himself, and John, who's a vicar and a white mother to 2 adopted black brothers who are in primary school. Here she is.
Adopted children always struggle with self-esteem, self-identity, and lots of those related things, and I think it just poses a different set of challenges for them to be in a transracial context. But I think the makeup of society and families within society today looks much more diverse and inclusive and varied and blended and all of those other wonderful words, and I think that's to be celebrated, and transracial adoption is part of that, and I don't think it should be seen as better or worse than finding ethnic matches. I just think we need to acknowledge that there are different challenges for each, and to try and move forward for the best match for each child.
Well, Dr. Krish Kandaya is the founding director of Home for Good, the charity seeking homes for children in the care system. Krish, hi to you.
Good evening, Tony.
We mentioned during the earlier interview that the law changed in 2014, which required people at the time to try and match ethnicity as much as possible. Is this simply a case of that change in law taking time to work through the system, do you think? Or is there another reason why black children have to wait longer to be adopted?
I think the law change was a really good idea, because you don't want a child's colour to stop it finding a home. And so removing that barrier means that the loving family is the most important thing for a child to find. But we are finding that children are waiting longer, and from our research it seems to be because people want that ethnic match, black adopters want an ethnic match, white adopters want an ethnic match. So we just don't have enough black adopters in the system.
Right, okay.
And that seems to be the challenge. And we're trying to inspire more black adopters to come forward, take some of the fear and stigma out of the system, and make sure they have a really good experience.
Right, so what is the issue at the root of that then, Chris? Why aren't more black adopters coming forward?
Well, we did some research with Comrades Savanta, and they told us that basically black people are twice as open to adoption as other groups, which is amazing, but they also have more fears about engaging with the system. And that could be, I mean, we've been watching it on BBC, haven't we, things like the Mangrove show or the Windrush scandal. They're worried they won't be treated well as they go through the system. They're worried that maybe the system won't understand their culture or their religion or their background, and therefore they're kind of more nervous about entering the system to begin with.
The very idea, though, that black families are being encouraged to come forward and adopt black children, does that mean that transracial adoption is not as satisfactory an outcome as someone of the same ethnicity adopting a child?
No, we just are recognising that's what adopters want. They want that match, and so that's what we're trying to find. I'd love to do the research the other way around, what the children want. Often children are the kind of Lego bricks that get moved around rather than actually being listened to and find out what their desires are. You know, I'm an adopter as well. We've adopted a child that's a different race, from a racial mix from me and my wife. And, you know, it's not second best, but we are trying to solve this problem, why black children wait the longest, and it does seem to be that ethnic match might be part of the challenge.
And so are there any schemes to try and change the perception of black families then when they have these concerns about dealing with the state?
Yes, there is. Home for Good's got one. We call it Change His Future. There's an incredible video of imagining the first black Prime Minister stepping forward out of Downing Street and telling his story that he was a child that grew up in foster care and he got adopted. We're also running a pilot in Birmingham and London for black adopters to come forward and have a really good experience. They just need to go through the Home for Good website and they can kind of start that journey there.
Just to end, we spoke to Joy. I mentioned Joy. We heard her a moment ago, and she's had on the whole, a very positive experience of doing this. At the same time, are you saying we want more black adopters to come forward, but if not, please, white adopters, please come forward and consider transracial adoption, because presumably a parent is better than no parent, is what you're saying?
Totally, that's right. There are thousands of children waiting for adoption right now in the UK, and we need more adopters to come forward, willing to take the children as they are. Whatever their backgrounds, a lot of these children are older, some of them have siblings, many have additional needs, and some are from black and minority ethnic backgrounds. We need loving families to come forward, opening their hearts, opening their homes, and giving these children the love that they need.
Chris, great to talk to you. Thank you. Dr. Chris Kandai, their founding director of Home for Good. It is 5:46 now on Drive.
If you're looking for a new podcast, by the way, maybe when you're out getting your daily walk, your exercise, or whatever it may be, there is a new episode of How Do You Cope from Alice and John that you can find on the BBC Sounds app now. And they've been talking to Michael Rosen, the children's author, about the fact that he had coronavirus. And he's spoken about this. It's been for him a really long and difficult battle for recovery. It's called Hello Body, What Can You Do? And that is well worth digging out and having a listen to if you're looking for something to keep you company.
Yeah, the latest Kermode and Mayo film reviews out as well. They're saying hello to Jason Isaacs, talking to him about his new film Skyfire. Mark reviews Jingle Jangle and Hillbilly Elegy, among others, and he offers the choices of the best and worst films on TV this week.
Some great pictures around today of these 4 NASA astronauts who've been travelling in SpaceX's Dragon capsule up to the International Space Station. They arrived safely. They blasted off from Florida yesterday.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
And resilience rises. Not even gravity contains humanity when we explore as one for all.
So that's the Dragon capsule, and it's made by SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's company. When you see what it does, it's extraordinary. It performs these inch-perfect manoeuvres to bring basically the capsule into an attachment position on the front of the International Space Station. The crew will spend 6 months there. It's no secret that I'm always banging on about space-related things because I find it really interesting, but also this idea of new ways to get to the International Space Station, because I went a couple of years ago to Boeing to see their Starliner, which basically, when it works, will do the same sort of job as the Dragon capsule. And this is the new way of things, isn't it? The new way of getting particularly American astronauts up to the International Space Station. It's not shuttles anymore or anything like that.
Yes, this is NASA's next step forward in their program of human spaceflight. They want to, at least in terms of low Earth orbit, so that's getting to the International Space Station at the moment, they want to rely on private companies. So currently that is SpaceX and Boeing, but the hope is that now that there is a business, now that there's a market, other people might start stepping forward as well. And that's part of NASA's kind of remit to build space business within the US. But it's very much sort of letting private enterprise take the reins in low Earth orbit.
And when you look at how the Dragon actually works and performs, and the fact that it's reusable as well, which is a big part of it. I mean, just those manoeuvres. I was going to ask how difficult it is to make something like that happen, but I imagine there probably aren't words to describe it.
Yes, so spaceflight, we've been doing, manoeuvring about in space for a good 50 years now, 60 years actually. So people are pretty sure about how to fly a spacecraft. One of the good things about if you're flying in space is that it's very predictable. You don't have any air currents, you don't have anything that might randomly, well, not many things that might randomly affect the flight of your spacecraft. So if it works in theory, it's much more likely to work on practice than, say, an airplane would. So in some ways, it's much easier. However, in some other ways, it's much harder. There's no air resistance, which is one of the main ways that people use to steer on Earth. So you're doing it entirely with thrusters and timed movements and trying to get everything in perfect balance. Which is quite tricky, but thankfully people seem to have been getting pretty good at it in the last couple of years.
And the fact that it's autonomous, it does its own thing, would that be a strange feeling for astronauts? Are they used to having any level of control at all over these manoeuvres?
Spaceflight has become increasingly automated over the past couple of decades. From the Soyuz, which are very, very manual, to the shuttles were much more automated. These were specifically designed to be incredibly automated and easy to use so that you can dramatically reduce training time, reduce the cost of space flight, because that's one of the main costs, is training your astronauts to fly, getting more people into space and democratizing it as well, because it means that you don't have to people who are absolutely genius pilots to fly these things anymore. Because so much of it is automated. So hopefully that will start getting more and more people out into space.
And the fact that I don't know, it's one of those things where it takes a little over a day. It's about 27 hours or so, isn't it? And for some reason, I think you would think that it would, you think it can take 14 hours to fly from the UK only to the west coast of the US. It seems astonishing that they can get to space in a tiny bit over a day.
The International Space Station is closer than the US. The US is, I think, a couple of thousand miles away, whereas the International Space Station is only about 300 to 400 kilometres above our heads.
We tend to think of it that when it's up instead of across, we think of those distances as far bigger, don't we?
Yeah, you have to go around the world a couple of times to get there. That's why it takes so long. But actually, in terms of absolute distance, you're not going very far at all.
What's going to happen next then? As we said, this is something that the SpaceX will continue with, and there's Boeing who are in the race as well. Are we looking at potentially faster journeys or bigger crew capsules? What are they working towards?
So both Crew Dragon, which is the one that launched yesterday, and Boeing Starliner Both of those can take 7 people. Currently, the Soyuz could only take 3, so that's what the Russian capsule that we've been using for the past 9 years. So the idea is about taking more people up to the space station. They can get more work and more science done and faster. And it also hopefully means that when people start going on longer missions, I know there's plans to take a commercial flight around the moon. Whether or not that will happen remains to be seen, but there's plans for it, and that will be able to take more people with it as well, rather than the 3 people of an Apollo crew, which is the only time we've been to the moon before. So hopefully, yeah, it should be a fairly big increase of space activities.
Yeah, lots still to do, lots still to see. Thank you, Dr. Ezzy Pearson, who's an astrophysicist and space journalist.
Now, let us take ourselves to a lovely place. One was in Sydney, the other in Torquay.
I find a map and draw.
Well, the best of luck then, really. I always like these good news, because at your lowest points, you two probably thought, I might never find love again, and yet here you are, which is great. What are you going to do tomorrow, first thing? Any plans?
Well, forecast weather, doesn't it? But we're still allowed out, because Andrew's flight changed at Singapore, and Australia and Singapore are on the corridor list, so we don't have to self-isolate, which is great. So we'll probably go out for a walk. Shops aren't open yet, so I've taken Andrew to Sainsbury's though.
Oh, well, that's clinched it. That's done it. Don't worry about that. He won't be going home anytime soon if you've shown him the veg aisle at Sainsbury's. Good luck, you two.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Andrew and Rosie there, Anna. So you see, he's been to Sainsbury's.
There's a lot of pressure there, isn't there?
Very good-looking couple, by the way. I didn't want to say that while they were on air to embarrass them.
Did you know? Well, I can't see them.
But now I can.
You said he looked like he'd just been in a snake pit.
No, but
You're just being coy with him.
No, his looks. He was just shivering. He looked a bit, borderline distressed.
Okay, well, at least we'll get an invite to the wedding.
Yes.
Hopefully.
I am
eventually happens. You forgot to ask for that.
Yeah.
Would have been a free day out.
Well, can I bring J-Rod?
Digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Claire Ronacres. Pubs, restaurants and non-essential shops are to shut across Glasgow and large swathes of Western Scotland to drive coronavirus infection rates down in time for Christmas. More than 2 million people will be subject to the toughest restrictions in Scotland's tier system for 3 weeks from 6 p.m. on Friday. Stuart Patrick is the Executive Director of the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. He gave his reaction to the announcement.
Disappointed on behalf of so many members who will feel that they are, once again, like light bulbs being switched on and off. And in Glasgow City alone, about 80,000 jobs that will now go back into suspension. Hopefully under the job retention scheme, but I wonder how many of them will emerge from that in due course.
All police forces in England and Wales have been advised to stop issuing £10,000 so-called super fines for people who break lockdown rules. The National Police Chiefs Council says it's recommending that a court summons is issued instead due to concern they could be unfair, as people who contest the fines in court can pay a lower amount. Speaking at a meeting of the West Midlands Strategic Policing and Crime Board, the local Police and Crime Commissioner David Jameson said the situation was particularly awkward as he'd been an enthusiastic supporter of tough rules.
It's deeply embarrassing now that we've found that the legislation has been found wanting and it hasn't been properly thought through. It's led to what I consider a deeply embarrassing situation for myself, and as I think has had some way, it's actually undermined some of the work that your excellent officers are doing, Chief Constable.
The Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross insists Boris Johnson does believe in devolution, despite reports that he described it as a disaster. The Prime Minister's been heavily criticised for calling it Tony Blair's biggest mistake. Nicola Sturgeon suggested that independence was the best answer for the Scottish Parliament. Mr Ross says the problem lies with the Scottish National Party.
Devolution is not the issue. The issue is the SNP's obsession with independence, over-delivering for people in Scotland with the powers they have from the Scottish Parliament, with the Scottish Government being one of the most powerful devolved administrations anywhere in the world.
The family of the 1966 World Cup winner Nobby Stiles says football needs to address the scandal of dementia in the game. He died last month. Stiles was one of 5 players in the 1966 team with the condition. Research has shown that former footballers are 3.5 times more likely to die of dementia than the general population, and questions have been raised about the link to heading the ball. The FA says it continues to work closely with the Alzheimer's Society on the issue. And Dolly Parton says she donated $1 million towards a coronavirus vaccine because she wanted it to do good. Yesterday, the researchers in whom she invested announced their vaccine was almost 95% effective. The weather, mostly cloudy and mild tonight. There'll be heavy rain for northwest Scotland with a risk of local flooding. Other northern and western parts of the UK will turn wetter by dawn. BBC News at 6:03.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
In travel news, we'll start with the M25 clockwise from junction 24 Pottersbar to 25, the A10 at Enfield. There was an accident closing 2 lanes there. It has now been dealt with, so all lanes are open, but congestion goes back to junction 22 at St Albans and it's taking over an hour to get through. At Norfolk, Kings Lynn, the A10 Lynn Road southbound before the A134. A4, there's a broken down lorry. The road partially blocked and traffic is very slow. The Blackwall Tunnel southbound from the A13 to Greenwich. The accident there is closing one lane and causing some long queues. And the A406 North Circular southbound at Beckton roundabout. There is one lane blocked there because of an incident and traffic is queuing. Michelle Dignan, 5 Live Travel.
Thank you very much, Michelle. You're listening to Drive on 5 Live with Anna and Tony. We go down various avenues as the programme goes along. Secret ash scattering was one of them today. This one says, my partner Adrian did the Great Escape. Oh, yeah, that's dropping it down the trousers. That was his mum Yvonne's ashes on number 1 court, Henman Hill, and the practice courts at Wimbledon. They went there together every year, so it was fitting. It's nice.
It is. Well, there's a lot of ingenuity involved in some of these as well. You know, people work out how they're going to do it and plan it in advance.
Yes, thank you for your nostalgia as well. We were talking about Marmite earlier on. Someone dumped their boyfriend because he smelled like Marmite. Richard Townsend, my granddad used to live in Vermont-Trent, and the worst bit was looking past the Marmite olfactory.
You see, for some people that would be great. It depends whether you love it or hate it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For some people that would be a holiday in itself, just wandering to and fro past the factory all day.
Yeah, keep your text coming in. Thanks to Andy in Lincoln as well for that text you sent. Andy, 85058 at BBC 5 Live, 4 minutes or 5 minutes past 6.
The man from Stevenage comes across the line, wins the Turkish Grand Prix and becomes the most successful Formula 1 driver of all time. Equals Michael Schumacher's World Championship record with 7. He has the most wins, he has the most pole positions, and the British driver is the greatest Formula 1 driver of all time. That's for all the kids out there who dream the impossible. You can do it too, man. I believe in you guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support.
Don't listen to anybody that tells you you can't achieve something. Dream the impossible and speak it into existence, and you've got to work for it, you've got to chase it, and you've got to never give up and never doubt yourself.
Get reaction and analysis from the Turkish Grand Prix with 5 Live's Checkered Flag podcast. Download and subscribe now.
On 5 Live.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
Now, the Scottish Government is placing 11 councils into its highest level of coronavirus restrictions from this Friday at 6 p.m. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, announced the decision earlier on today, moving 2.3 million people across Western and Central Scotland into Tier 4 restrictions.
The council areas that will move to level 4 for a limited period from Friday are the City of Glasgow, Renfrewshire, East Renfrewshire, Eastern Bartonshire, Western Bartonshire, North Lanarkshire, South Lanarkshire, East Ayrshire, South Ayrshire, Stirling and West Lothian. In all of these areas there are grounds for continued and significant concern.
Well, the measures are due to be in place until the 11th of December. Level 4 rules mean socialising between people who don't live together will be banned indoors, but up to 6 people from 2 households can still meet outside.
It also means that schools and factories will stay open, but non-essential retail outlets, gyms, hairdressers, beauty salons, they will all have to close. Restaurants, pubs and cafes can only operate a takeaway service.
Yeah, guidance on travel restrictions will also become law from Friday, meaning people under level 3 or 4 restrictions can't travel outside their own council area except for what's called essential purposes. Nicola Sturgeon said the tightened rules were necessary to combat worryingly high infection rates.
These decisions will help us limit the impact of the virus, including in loss of life, as we steer a path through the next few months towards the brighter times that are now within sight as vaccines and better treatments become available. Difficult though today's decisions undoubtedly are, please do not forget that an end to all of this is now within our grasp. But we must get through the next few months as safely as possible, and that means tough decisions cannot be avoided, no matter how much you and I fervently wish that they could be.
Let's talk to a couple of business owners who will be affected by this announcement today. Lindsay Roberts is the owner of Strong Like a Mother. It's a gym in Glasgow. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello.
And George is with us as well. George, are you a Golding or a Goulding?
I'm a Goulding, as in
You're a Goulding. Runs Goulding Garden Centre in Carluke in South Lanarkshire. Hello to you. Lindsay, first of all, I know there's been in certain parts of England, there's been frustration among gym owners when they had to close. How do you feel about this?
incredibly frustrating. Like, I wanted to start by saying that the health and well-being of the nation is evidently super important to people like myself, because that's the role that I'm in. That's my career role, and I do not envy the decisions that the First Minister has to make. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's incredibly frustrating as a business owner whose role is to support the community, and we know that physical health and mental health are important combatants against things like this. So it's just very difficult to know how we move forward.
What kind of stuff do you do at the gym, Lindsay? Is it classes where people have to mix together? Is there any way that you could do it on a single person at a time basis, wiping everything down, or is that just unsustainable?
For us, that is really sustainable. So we started off as a gym traditional setup, people coming in to use the gym and also operating with lots of classes, but we've done everything that the government have asked in terms of the guidelines. We've completely revamped our business model. We work with people on an individual basis as per the guidelines. Everything gets wiped down pre and post use. The gym gets cleaned regularly, and it also gets professionally cleaned regularly and disinfected. We only have 4 people in our space. We have over 4,000 square feet of space. And we only bring 4 people into that space at once. So I'm sure you can imagine the amount of space that everyone has available. And I know that other small gyms are doing the same kind of thing. So we are really limiting the mix of people, and nobody is having any contact, nobody is sharing kit. So effectively, you're probably at much higher risk in a supermarket or the essential places that you have to go than you are in our space.
George, what about the garden centre? Because I know you've got bits that can stay open and bits that have to close.
Yes, the rest is to close. We can keep it open for carry out if we do so choose. And the Santa's Grotto that we've just finished setting up, it's to close as well. We're still waiting on clarification whether we can open that back up the 12th, but we're hoping so, because it's just fully booked. But the rest of the garden centre has been given by our body, which is the HTA. They've allowed us as essential retail, so we're allowed to open that. But it's just a worrying time, and I just think that if we'd done this in line with our English counterparts a few weeks ago, we would have been beyond this point, and we would maybe have got Christmas trade. But leaving it to the 12th of December before we reopen, it's cutting it time for a lot of, it's cutting it very fine for a lot of retailers out there.
So you're saying you wish Nicola Sturgeon had done this sooner?
If she'd done it in the same time as when Boris and his team had done it, would have been coming out the other end of it now with a 4-week lockdown, all dates in place, and I think we would have been in a far stronger place going into Christmas. We've got to remember, Christmas is just one day. There's a big economy out there and a lot of jobs relying on the economy to keep things going. So Christmas is just one day. The economy will keep going beyond Christmas.
That's interesting, actually, because politicians in all of the nations really are very much focusing on Christmas, and certainly Nicola Sturgeon today said, look, if we do this now, then potentially there'll be more movement allowed for Christmas. But it's interesting you say there it's just the one day. For you, it's obviously more than one day. It's several weeks worth of takings.
That's correct. But just what you say, there is a big focus on this one day for Christmas. We have a big lead-up month to Christmas, so that's why I would have supported a fortnight ago going into a 4-week lockdown, whatever that they chose to do. I would have supported that. But I think now we've cut a Christmas experience that was running for 5 weeks. We've cut it down now to 13 days. Whether it's viable or not, I don't know. It's all built, ready to go. So we're just going to run it for the days that we're allowed to run it.
Lindsay, what about you? I would imagine, I could be wrong, I would imagine that January is the busy time for you. You would want things to try and gear back up again for January.
Yeah, I mean, essentially January is normally a busy time for gyms. It's maybe a bit different for our demographic and just the way that we run our gym. But I mean, I guess we're looking at fallout probably from Christmas get-togethers, which could affect more lockdowns in January, February. So it's like the other caller was saying, it's just a really worrying time, and I don't want to sound like I'm being reckless with people's lives. Of course, that's super important, but I believe that the fallout from this, in terms of people's mental health and well-being,
Lindsay, what do you think about the timing of this?
honestly, I don't know if one would have been better than the other in terms of our industry. Like we were the last to open. You know, we only opened in August, so any sort of lockdown from then is going to be difficult for us. We are also probably the least supported industry in terms of financial support from the government and things as well. So I don't know how this industry is going to survive, how the small businesses will survive, the independent gyms that don't have that corporate backing or that corporate funding. It could be really devastating, which will have a knock-on effect on the health of the nation.
Thank you both, and good luck with it. Lindsay Roberts, who owns Strong Like a Mother, a gym in Glasgow, and George Goulding as well, who runs Goulding's Garden Centre in Carluke in South Lanarkshire.
Just a reminder, Kelly Cates is in charge of 5 Live Sport tonight from 7 o'clock. Rob Green, Nathan Blake, Gary Caldwell and Ben Haynes will talk football. We'll look ahead to tomorrow's home nations international fixtures. And Wales play Finland, Scotland away to Israel, Northern Ireland take on Romania, and England play Iceland, so plenty to get through. Then it's to switch to rugby union, a whole different set of international matches. England against Ireland, Wales play Georgia on Saturday, Scotland against France on Sunday. Sonia McLaughlin, Hugo Monnier and Chris Ashton will be here from 9 to look forward to those. Now, a Spanish businessman who acted as a go-between in buying protective gear for NHS staff during the coronavirus pandemic has been paid £21 million of taxpayers' money. The consultant had been in line for millions more, according to court documents in Florida, seen by BBC News. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning joins us now. Take us through the story, Lucy. What do we know?
Well, it all starts with a Miami jewellery company. Seems a long way from designer jewellery to the UK's crisis in trying to get protective equipment into hospitals. But a man called Michael Sager ran a jewellery company there, and he said he had Chinese contacts, and he decided to use those to start getting hold of PPE equipment. And even though this was a new company, he got some new contracts with the British government. We don't know exactly how much because not all the details have been published, but we believe it's around £200 million. And he used a Spanish man to help him with that, a man called Gabriel Anderson. But the two men fell out and that prompted a court case in Miami, and that meant that we could get a look at the court documents, and it lifted a lid on how the government was spending the money on PPE, because what it revealed was that Gabriel Anderson was getting a consulting fee from the American company for helping with finding manufacturers and helping with logistics and quality control. And he got, for those first two contracts from the UK government that the UK government asked for, he got from the American company $28 million. That's £21 million. And the court documents said the contracts were lucrative and that he did very well out of them. And there were 3 more contracts that the company were going to deliver to the UK because the UK government ordered more. And on those contracts, Gabriel Anderson was going to get a consulting fee of around £15 million. In actual fact, he didn't end up working on the deals, but it suggests quite a lot of serious money going to somebody acting as a go-between in these. The second amount that included gloves and gowns, that was a deal that Gabriel Anderson stopped working on that is now the subject of this court case, but it did eventually get to the UK, although there were delays in it getting there. The British government didn't pay Gabriel Anderson. He was paid by the American company. But what critics have been saying is the government doing the right sort of checks if this go-between, this man who was getting consulting fees, is being paid something like £21 million for helping out with 2 contracts?
Yeah, have we had any comment at all from the government?
We have. We've had a statement from the government saying that they work and have been working tirelessly to deliver PPE, and so far they've delivered more than 4.9 billion items, and they've got billions of items still coming into the country, and they say that proper due diligence is carried out for all government contracts and that they take the checks extremely seriously. And the American company Sega said in a statement to us that at no time have they ever used any middlemen, that they have a few full-time staff because they're a small company. So for large projects, we bring in short-term contractors for additional expertise, and the company said it was really proud to have played a part in trying to get this PPE for UK health workers. I think the thing to remember is there has been a lot of criticism swirling around about how the government has bought PPE and whether the money has been too much, whether contacts or chums, as the opposition has said, of the government have got the contracts. And there's actually a big report out tomorrow from the National Audit Office, who is the public spending watchdog, and they are going to report on how they think the government have done on buying PPE, and I think the government is likely to face some criticism in that report.
Yeah, that will be interesting tomorrow. No doubt we'll be covering it in detail here on Drive. Lucy, thank you. That's our special correspondent, Lucy Manning, reporting there. It's 6:20 now.
The reports in the US claim that President Trump has been talked out of attacking Iran's main nuclear site by his senior advisors. The New York Times says a meeting took place last week. The White House isn't commenting on it. President Trump, of course, has yet to allow Joe Biden to officially begin the transition process to become the next US president on the 20th of January. Well, Bruce Gentleson is Professor of Political Science at Duke University. He served in both President Obama and President Clinton's State Departments and was part of the transition teams for Al Gore while he had one for a while in 2000 and for President Clinton in 1992 as well. Bruce, welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me.
There are so many things that feel very strange and away from the norm that are happening in the administration at the moment, and certainly the idea of launching quite a provocative attack when you are in the period post-election, the last few weeks essentially of your presidency. This kind of thing would never normally happen.
No, it would not. We go back to December 1992 when President George H.W. Bush sent the American military to Somalia because there was a humanitarian crisis. He was still president. Bill Clinton was president-elect, but he consulted with Bill Clinton because he knew this would be on Bill Clinton's docket once Clinton became president. Donald Trump seems ready to leave as much coal in Joe Biden's stocking as he can. An attack on Iran would be an enormous piece of coal. Fortunately, it sounds like he was talked out of it in that meeting, but that doesn't necessarily have staying power with someone like Donald Trump. He may decide again to possibly do this.
Where does the buck stop, Bruce, at a time like this? Because obviously when we were in the US a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about who ultimately the generals and the military answer to, and it's the Constitution as opposed to the president. But if he were to put his foot down and say, I want to do this, would his top generals have to agree and do what he said? Or could they say to him, no, not at this time, it's not your decision anymore?
Yeah, it's very hard, because civilian control of the military is a core principle. And I don't think they could refuse the order. They could do one of two things. They could resign and go public and try to get pressure on the president. Or the other is they could do their best to sort of slow walk it, get some bureaucracy in between and buy a little bit of time. But I think as much as they would worry about an attack on Iran, the civilian control of the military, they would be really frightened about a flat no and the precedent that was set.
And in terms of transition, and as we said, this is something you've been involved with, even with Al Gore, he did have for a time a transition team, and at this stage, what is normally happening that isn't happening with Joe Biden?
Yeah, the two purposes of a transition are affirmation and preparation. The affirmation is, hey, we all played hard. The game's over. You won. Congratulations. Let's shake hands and let's respect the system. That hasn't happened. And even if Donald Trump were to announce today that he acknowledges that Biden won, a whole lot of damage has been done in terms of basic values of the system. The preparation is everything from the worker bee level to the highest level, exchanging information, some classified, some not, being able to hit the ground running. And the biggest part of that is COVID. The lack of preparation on COVID, when we have, I know you have a bad surge in the UK, our surge is just astronomical. And the unwillingness to do that, as Joe Biden said the other day, many people will die because of Trump's unwillingness to even cooperate on something so fundamental.
Is there any way around that? Is there any way to obtain this kind of information without the formal process being observed? Or is that ridiculous?
No, it's not ridiculous. There's a lot you can do. Biden has a team of experts he's already established, his COVID advisory group, and there's plenty of information in the public domain that we all have, including on a lot of foreign policy issues. They're doing their best. They've named the team for each department, State Department, Defense Department, Justice Department, that's ready to go in. So there's a lot you can do without that, but it's still sort of off to the side. You're not making the connecting points of the actual policy process. And so you can do some, but it's pretty limited.
It's a fascinating thing, really, because it obviously works very differently to the way it works in this country, where you have the election and then the next morning, essentially, you wake up and somebody new is heading into Downing Street. The fact that there is this transition process, this series of about sort of 2 and a bit months, really, before the new president-elect moves in. Do you think it's a system that works well?
Well, it can. Part of it is we have many more political appointees that go into the executive branch than you do. And so those people are gone as of January 20th. The civil service really, continues, and they work for one president after another, what Trump likes to call the deep state. Well, deep state can mean something really positive in the sense they give us continuity. But he's hollowed that out as well. And so, just as Donald Trump has tried to make the presidency fit him rather than him fit the presidency, on his way out the door, he's doing it again, and in a very dangerous way, because it's really fueling the white nationalist domestic terrorists, and we may have a lot of civil violence ahead of us as well.
Just to sort of bring things full circle, really, and end where we began, we were talking about whether or not he could do something like launch an attack on Iran in the last weeks of his presidency. What is the form when it comes to making decisions? Is it seen as a time when the outgoing president can tie up loose ends, maybe sort out some things or achieve some things that they wanted to do before they go? Or is it really seen as better form that you kind of don't touch everything and you tiptoe out and that, your sphere of influence has ended now?
Yeah, to be fair, every president on the way out has taken care of some pet projects, for example, pardons of people and a few other things. But Trump is, but for so I hope you fail. But he's coming into the office with more foreign policy experience than ever before. And of course, more foreign leaders have called to congratulate Joe Biden than Republican United States senators have. And the person next to Donald Trump who's most responsible for the situation we're in is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. If he were to say, hey, the results are the results, let's move on, a lot of those other Republicans would come out of the closet and start to play ball, and many people in the bureaucracy would as well. And he's not doing that either.
Bruce, thank you. Really fascinating to talk to you. Bruce Gentleson, who's a professor of political science at Duke University, but also experienced in President Obama and President Clinton's State Departments, and as being part of the transition team for Al Gore and President Clinton as well.
News and sport shortly. Just before that, while we've been on air this afternoon, a panel of members of Labour's ruling body, the National Executive Committee, have been meeting to decide Jeremy Corbyn's immediate future. You may remember he was suspended from the party after 54 years for his reaction to a report by a human rights watchdog into levels of anti-Jewish racism in the party. He said at the time that the scale of anti-Semitism had been dramatically overstated. He was subsequently suspended for not withdrawing those remarks. We're being told, certainly sources close to Mr Corbyn are saying, and also The Guardian are reporting, that he will be readmitted to the party. So it looks at the moment, we'll get independent confirmation, but sources close to Mr Corbyn and The Guardian reporting at the moment that he will be readmitted to the party. The meeting this afternoon was to decide whether to lift that suspension or whether he would face further disciplinary action. So at the moment, no indication of further disciplinary action, but certainly reports that he will be readmitted to the Labour Party. Right, probably more on that throughout the night here on 5 Live. It's just coming round to news time now, coming up to 6:30.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
So the latest headlines tonight. More than 2 million people are going into the toughest restrictions in Scotland's level system for 3 weeks from Friday. Pubs, restaurants and non-essential shops will close across central and western Scotland, including Glasgow. The Scottish Conservative leader is insisting Boris Johnson does believe in devolution, despite reports that he described it as a disaster. Douglas Ross says he is speaking to the Prime Minister this evening about his reported remarks to a virtual meeting of Conservative MPs. A Spanish businessman who acted as a go-between to secure PPE for NHS staff was paid £21 million by the UK taxpayer. Legal papers also show he was in line for £20 million more. The Department of Health says proper checks are done for all contracts. And police in England and Wales will no longer fine people £10,000 for breaking COVID rules on gatherings of more than 30 people. The National Police Chiefs Council says forces should issue court summons instead. Just worth reminding you that reports are emerging that Jeremy Corbyn is about to be readmitted to the Labour Party after that suspension, after 54 years for his reaction to the anti-Semitism review. Right, time for the sports news now. Here's Dennis.
Tony, thank you. The family of 1966 World Cup winner Nobby Stiles says football needs to address the scandal of dementia in football and has criticised the PFA's lack of support for players. The former England and Manchester United midfielder was the 5th member of England's World Cup winning squad to have been diagnosed with dementia. He died earlier this month. Here's Nobby's son, John Stiles.
I had a study last year. Nothing's been done. They could have been building homes or providing care, but they've done nothing. Just hiding behind the fact that it's very difficult to get conclusive 100% evidence of a brain injury.
In a statement, the PFA says our thoughts are with Nobby Stiles' family at this very difficult time. The PFA charity offers a range of support to former professional footballers and their families and carers. The support we provide is always confidential, and as each family's circumstance will vary, we try to ensure that the support provided is suitable to their individual needs. Fans could be back in football stadiums before Christmas. The government is exploring the potential for fans to return to sports venues in some parts of England as early as next month. It comes after the Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden described talks with football leaders as constructive following a virtual summit meeting earlier today. Here's our sports news reporter Laura Scott.
We understand the officials in the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport are now exploring the possibility of different rules for different tiers and whether that will allow fans to return in areas where there are the lowest infection rates. Obviously, this is all dependent on whether conditions allow for it. No decisions made as yet, but some positive noises coming out of the government for football fans at the moment.
In other football news, FIFA has moved this season's Club World Cup from December to February next year. It's because of COVID-19 restrictions. Liverpool, of course, won the last Club World Cup in December 2019. The FA say it's fully supportive of FIFA's decision to cancel the women's under-20s and under-17s World Cups, despite it being disappointing. The under-17 tournament had initially been postponed earlier this year and had been rescheduled to take place in India in 2021. It's now 2 wins from 2 for Dominic Thiem at the end of season ATP Tour finals in London. The US Open champion beat Rafa Nadal 7-6, 7-6 in the match of the tournament so far to all but book his place in the semi-finals.
I think all 8 players here are in a great shape, both physically and mentally, so we're gonna see a lot of close matches, lots of tie breaks like today, and there's always the one who is a little bit luckier, the one who has the slightly better day is gonna win, and I'm happy that I got it today.
5 Live Sports Extra has commentary of Stefanos Tsitsipas against Andrei Rublev from 8 this evening, and Leinster's James Ryan will captain Ireland in Saturday's Autumn Nations Cup game against England at Twickenham. The lock takes the armband from the injured Johnny Sexton. Meanwhile, Wasps flanker Jack Willis has been left out of the England squad to prepare for the clash. Back flanker Sam Underhill returns to Eddie Jones's 25-man squad. That's the latest from BBC Sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
In travel news, the M1 southbound between junction 25 Nottingham and 24 East Midlands Airport. There's an accident closing 2 lanes and causing queuing traffic. The M6 southbound after junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction. There's an accident which is blocking 1 lane and making things very slow. The M25 clockwise, it's still congested from junction 22 St Albans round to 25 for the A10 at Enfield. The accident before junction 25 was cleared quite a while ago now. And London Greenwich Blackwall Tunnel southbound, it's still quite busy following an earlier accident just before the tunnel. Michelle Dignan, 5 Live Travel.
Thank you, Michelle. Just to clarify that story about Jeremy Corbyn, the BBC now understands that he's already been reinstated into the party, so that is the latest that we know. Thank you for all your texts throughout the programme. Anna, you know we were talking about...
I was going to say the milk, actually. I'm not sure that's involved. But not far from there, in fact, where we travel to work, there's the bread factory. Do you ever smell the bread factory?
No, I don't.
Do you not?
No.
On the way in? Oh, you have to sniff harder. It's great.
I wonder if I come in the same way as you now. Perhaps you need to escort me in.
Yeah, I do.
Sarah in Yorkshire, a lot of people talking about breweries. I went to school in Norwich and the smells that take me straight by there are breweries. We had Watney's Brewery next to our school. And on Wednesday afternoon as I walk home, the smell of Caramac from the Macintosh's chocolate factory. Do you remember Caramac?
Oh, yes. Oh, I love a Caramac. Oh, I bet the smell of that's beautiful as well. Yeah. Really warm and caramelly.
And just briefly, here's one, just finally from me, because I resonate with this as well. Stuart, it reminds me of my mum. Stuart from Carlisle. I love the smell of Imperial leather soap because it reminds me of my late dad when we had a caravan in Cumbria. We used to wash outside, we never did this. We used to wash outside from a rusty tap, an Imperial leather soap, and get rinsed off by a watering can. Would love to go back. Are you sure, Stuart? Maybe the soap, not necessarily the watering can. Good. Well, thank you for all your texts. 85058 at BBC 5 Live. Have you got anything else to add?
BBC 5 Live.
Laura Whitmore.
Hi, this is Kylie Minogue, and you're listening to Laura Whitmore on BBC 5 Live. I'm pretty sure I thought this is what I want to do, or just at least, fantasized about it. But the first concert I went to was Culture Club, and I went with all the ribbons in my hair, my 14-year-old version of Boy George. My kind of disco dream, or my dream of singing, was in my head and in my heart.
Laura Whitmore. Listen now with the BBC Sounds app.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
Now, it's time for the second part of a really powerful conversation about Black Lives Matter, about white privilege, about being an ally, with Dominique Walker and Sophie Allen. Now, it's a particularly good time to have a discussion like this because here in the UK, you may well have seen it over the weekend. The BBC's just launched a new series of films from Steve McQueen, the Oscar-winning director. They're called Small Acts, and they focus on different experiences of the Caribbean community in Britain over 3 decades. So that is one particular reason to look at it. And also in America, it is almost 6 months since the death of George Floyd at the hands of the police, which was a really defining incident in the growth of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, Dominique, 15 years ago, saw her 18-year-old brother Anthony murdered in a racist attack in Huyton on Merseyside. And ever since, she has devoted her life to fighting racism, to educating people about its dangers. She set up the Anthony Walker Foundation, and she's worked for it ever since. And we put her together with Sophie. Now, Sophie is only 17, and she's from a largely white area of England. And she really wanted to try and find a way to understand the struggles of people who aren't white and to add her voice to the conversation as well. So they spent some time talking about it yesterday. Here's the second part of that conversation. And it begins with Dominique talking about her experience in the police. She joined Merseyside Police and was an officer and later a detective with them for more than a decade.
as a black police officer, obviously for me, I've always known there was my blackness, there's my womanness, and then there's me being a cop. So I'm almost a triple person in whichever way I navigated my time in the force. Now, for me, there was difficulties in terms of separating what was racism and what was sexism. And for me, they ended up almost meshing at times to being the same, because you can't separate the fact that I'm a black woman. I can't separate those things. So if I ever tried to say there was incidents of racism, sexism definitely followed after it within Merseyside Police, and that's me being completely real in that respect. But then there were obviously moments where I've become chair of the Black Police Association, where I've been able to implement things like reciprocal mentoring schemes, where I've been able to create action plans and strategies to try and increase attraction, recruitment, retention of black police officers and BAME police officers, and also like police officers within the force as well. So for me, there's always been this triple consciousness that I've had to have navigating my time within Merseyside Police. And there was instances where, I've heard racist language, I've been racially abused by people when I've been out on patrol. There's been instances where I was overlooked for promotion. There's all these things that you could relate to, both occupational culture, so again, we're talking in institutions now. Institutional racism, again, we're talking in institutions now. And then obviously individual incidences. I think we go back to our definition. Racism is all those different things in that respect. And then sexism does definitely follow. So for me, I think it's about us understanding that these things obviously do happen. And like I said, our structures are institutionally racist, and any organisation that sort of says that they're not, they are in that respect. And that's just me being completely clear. But they were designed in that way. It's not for me to sort of wag my finger at everybody and start shouting. I'm saying, no, this is a system that was designed in this way, where white people were at the top in terms of hierarchy of race and black people were at the bottom. It was designed in terms of jobs, resources, access to land, and this is going back to the 1800s now. So when we're talking and we want to relate it to today and we start to look at structural issues, we try not to look at groups of people as the problem. We look at problem policies, so racist policies within that. And then we start to look at the data. So the data tells us if you're black in this country, you're more likely to be unemployed, you're more likely to get stopped and searched by the police, you're more likely. And it's not because of your blackness. It's because of a system that is institutionally racist, that does those things and perpetrates those things against you. Now, I think for a lot of people, this will go completely over the head, and for me it's fine. I'd say come to me direct and let's have a conversation, and I'll present you with the evidence and we can talk about these things. But don't come to me with just thoughts and opinions and perspectives, because there has to be, like I said, that evidence base in relation to the things that you're talking about. Now, I could quote you a couple of reports that you can go and look at, and the data is there. The Runnymede Trust is always there. You can always go, and there's a number of different reports. I think the State of the Nation by Omar Khan, which gives you an overview of race inequalities right across society, and not just black people, but white people right across. So in some of that data, you will find gypsy and traveller communities are some of the most deprived. So what makes it that form of whiteness is unacceptable and they're discriminated against, but then your middle classes are treated completely different in that respect? And these are the conversations that we need to have. So we need to have individual conversations, but then we also need to have structural conversations and organisational conversations as well, because they do start at the individual. So it starts with your conversations, it starts then with your canteen talk, and then that moves to policy and practice, and ultimately how your organisation runs itself.
What has it been like for you this year in terms of, with your experience in the police and movement like defund the police, like that kind of thing, especially in America, but also in the UK? What's it been like to watch that kind of thing?
If I'm completely honest, Sophie, it's a conversation that has not sort of stopped in that respect, because of the worlds that I operate in. it's a conversation that hasn't really stopped. And I think in terms of defund the police and so on and so forth, and abolish the police and so on and so forth, I think what people are saying is, we've tried police reforms, we've tried all these different initiatives, and we're still getting the same inequalities right across criminal justice agencies. So people are looking for different approaches and community-based approaches. Now I think, see, when I'm talking about language, and I switch the language and I started talking that way, so reinvesting community funds into youth centres, reinvesting community funds into mental health. You know, when we start to talk about it in that way, people start to listen. And it's only because you don't like the phrase. But when I start to talk in a different embodied language, and we start to speak the same language, which is what we were talking about from the start, you can sort of see from my approach that, for me, it's a conversation that always has to be had, because we have to look at new ways that we do things in society. So we have to look at new ways to police, new ways to help communities, new ways to bring people into the police force or other agencies where they can work alongside communities and build communities. Ultimately, the work has to be, and I don't think any police officer in the country would disagree that their work is for their community, but you don't always have to be police to do that, in that respect. But then, sorry, Soph, go on.
I was actually just going to very quickly ask, if you don't mind. We recorded, or you recorded, Sophia, a conversation with your friend Hebe about various aspects of all of this. And I just wanted to hear the bit, and we'll hear it now, where you talked about your awakening almost this year, and how you discovered that these issues existed.
I really that has happened this year, because I know that it's been happening for a few years. Like, people are just more aware of it this year.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I didn't know it was a thing before. That really hurts me. That really makes me upset that I didn't know that this was a thing before.
Yeah.
I thought this was a 2020 thing. It's new. It was.
They created it after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It's been going on for
like 6 years.
Exactly. It's been going on for a very long time. The fact that it hasn't been publicised, and only until now, till
Goldrick Park, and feeling that it would be a real turning point. And of course it was for you, and for the way that you've fought against racism all your life ever since. Does it ever feel tiring to you that these things, despite your work, keep happening?
Oh gosh, tired. Oh, tired is not the word. It is exhausting. It's fatigue. For me, I like to think.
And for the way that you've fought against racism.
What other things could Dominique be doing and talking about? Honest, I'd have a lot more time. If the things obviously didn't happen to my brother as well, it would have led me onto a different path, definitely. And I think, you know, it is exhausting to do this work. And this is what I'm saying, it's not glamorous, because like what Sophie said, is people are dismissive and people are angry, and people think, I suppose, I'm a know-it-all and I'm trying to create divisions and blah blah. I've heard it all in that respect, and I'm just like, well, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is to hold a mirror onto how race operates in this country. And if you want to use my example of what happened to my brother for us to explain that, by all means use it in that respect. Because I am, and my family are an example of the things that can happen when racism is not challenged in society. That's why I'm a beacon for. And for me, yes, you know what? If I wish I had my brother here. I was cooking Sunday dinner for my sister and her fiance yesterday, and I was like, my brother would love it in that respect. But I haven't, you know, I can't have that. People must think I'm like I don't have feelings and emotions and stuff like that. I'm just like, I think I do this I do it for the love of people, and also so people don't have to go through. And this is black and brown people don't have to go through some of the things that my family and some of the things that I've seen and the trauma that has been a true. And I have an embodied experience, a embodied response to that where I laugh, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry in that respect. And I think for me, part of I do this work is for the love of people. So if you take it as any other way, then so be it. But I do it to love people and also to try and help people and to almost try and stop. I don't want no one to have to go through and see the things that I've seen in my life. I don't, yeah.
Yeah, watching the programme, I think it's so important that we have things like that, because I was watching it and I was crying quite a lot, and I was just, and it kind of, and I think this happens with everyone about all topics. You get desensitized to it in the news, and you get, because it's in every media outlet, it's in your face all the time, all this violence and death, and when you watch something like that program, it humanizes people, and you can see the effect that it had on your family. And it was, and I think, I'm not saying we should make a film or program about every person, but I think having that resource and saying to people, there's people behind that name, there's people behind that person that this affects as well. It's not over once the headline's finished.
Yeah,
I think that's really important.
No, I totally agree with you, Sophie. I think if I've done a lot of interviews over the years. I've spoken to the BBC a lot over the years, and a number of different media organisations as well. Now, I only give you a small portion in relation to the things that obviously that I've experienced. If I give you the full story, most people would not be able to handle and manage it and be as coherent and articulate as probably as I am today in that respect. For me, one example could be the untold damage that the death of his son had on my father. You know, it cut my dad's life short. Standard in that respect. And I don't mean to laugh, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry, like I said. So I think these stories need to be told. It doesn't always need to be as traumatic as Anthony, and in that respect. So we have to have a starting point, and the starting point is where you're coming from, Sophie. And I think, you know, I applaud you for what you're doing. But all I'd say is don't do it alone. You have to do it with self-compassion for yourself, because we all met almost a plan and a strategy in the work that you're doing. You never do it on your own, never in a silo, because silo becomes echo chamber, and echo chamber then becomes destructive, you know. And you identify and you work with definitive ways to try and help your communities, and have an active approach to understanding how you be anti-racist, and you continue to do it. It's a journey. It's not something that, okay, at the end of this call, now Sophie's anti-racist, we're going to put the stamp on her head, and she does a march and we do a parade. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If only it was that easy. So what we do is we start this work, and it's a continuum, so we continue the journey. And you have people that you go to that you can able, so you can come to me, Sophie. I'll give you my email address and contact details and stuff. You just come to me and just say, Dom, I've read the Good Immigrant, for example, and this topic come up, and I don't know what they're talking about. Can you give me some insight? And I can do that and help you in that respect. But, and again, this is on the side of caution, is because equally is the emotional toll and psychological toll that takes for whoever it is that you're going through. So just being conscious of that in the work that you're doing as well. But I suppose, go on, Sophie, sorry.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate the fact that you said even as a black woman yourself, you had to go through the work to be anti-racist. And I think that's the same for everything. You have to learn how to be anti-sexist. You have to learn how to be anti-racist. You can't. No one is born with knowing everything. If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Audre Lorde, she talks about, and she says, "My silences have not protected me. Your silence will not protect you. But for every real word spoken, for every attempt I have ever made to speak those truths for which I am still seeking." So basically, us being quiet is not, and especially as women, we all have a voice. We just need to be empowered and have the space to be able to use that voice, you know. And I think it's understanding that in respect to obviously this journey that you're now on. And I'd implore for you to stick with it, because it's not always easy. But it is a journey. And I suppose you should be commended for doing this, because, and like I said when I started the conversation, is I see this in the work of my daughter. So my daughter's 16, she's in sixth form at the moment, and she wrote a paper on feminism, and I just thought, well, and I read it, and I was just like, she knows more than I did at her age. She did, and well, she did, and that's what we're supposed to do. So my generation, so 35, above, is we're supposed to leave this stuff behind for you, you know, and you're supposed to be better than us. And I think if you're not better, then things will not get better. And I think that's the point of this conversation. I know you obviously thank Sam and the team for allowing us the space to do this as well, because not many other networks would allow us to do this, and have the space and the time to be able to talk in this way about racism and race, and how to be actively anti-racist as well.
Do you know, I've sat. You were saying there, Dominique, about this conversation you've just had, which I think was originally going to last about 25 minutes or so, but we've done double that, because it just, listen to the conversation the two of you have had, and for me just to sit and listen into it, to be honest, is really, you know, it's enlightening, but it's also been really warm and educational.